You're watching Idaho's News Channel 7. This is the news at 10.
It was almost 8 weeks ago when 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were murdered in their home in the early morning hours of November 13th. It was a brutal crime that left 4 families without a child and the small college town of Moscow, Idaho, on edge. Moscow police maintained it was a targeted attack.
Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims. We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there.
There was no murder weapon found, no motive made clear, and no suspect named until
Detectives arrested 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohberger in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania.
on December 30th, a Washington State University criminology student was arrested 2,500 miles away. Now, back in Idaho, the suspect faces 4 first-degree murder charges, and the families of the victims hope to see justice as the next chapter of their nightmare begins. And that man accused of murdering the 4 University of Idaho students did make his first court appearance in Idaho today, just an hour after police released the first detailed court documents in this case. This is the information we and the victims' families have been waiting to see. After nearly 8 long weeks, we now know more about what happened the night Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan were murdered, and even a little more about the weeks before. We have team coverage tonight. Abby Davis is in studio to explain what the affidavit lays out as Kohberger's timeline that morning and what led police to arrest him last week. But first, we're going to go live to Morgan Romero in Moscow with what happened in court today. Morgan?
Good evening, Brian. Brian Kohberger made his first court appearance in the state of Idaho today. It was a very quick hearing. In fact, that courtroom right behind me in this courthouse was packed with media, a very small courtroom, media from all over. It was a first-come, first-served situation as well, so we had to line up really early to get a spot inside that courtroom. I want to bring in a fellow investigative reporter, Alexandra Duggan. Now, Alex, you were inside that courtroom. You saw Brian Kohberger for the first time. What was his body language like?
Morgan, he was very casual when he walked in that room in an orange jumpsuit. He didn't look at the families of the victims who were sitting in the front row. He didn't say anything. The only thing he said was when the judge was reading the charges out, he said yes. He nodded his head. He clenched his jaw. That's the only thing I noticed. He wasn't handcuffed. He even smiled slightly at his attorney, who later got up and said that Brian Kohberger has a good family who stands behind him. And the judge, when she read the charges out, she said these crimes were very malicious and they were very premeditated.
But again, in the United States, innocent until proven guilty. It wasn't what happened in that hearing that was really pertinent to this case, though. It was what came out in an 18-page probable cause affidavit released less than an hour before that hearing. It laid out why investigators believe Brian Kohberger is the one who committed these atrocious crimes. Investigators say in this record that they were able to link Kohberger with the crime scene through DNA, video surveillance of his car, and through cell phone records. Inside this courthouse, where Brian Kohberger had his first court appearance in Idaho, a Latah County magistrate judge read him his charges. 1 count of burglary for unlawfully entering 1122 King Road with the intent to commit murder, and 4 counts of first-degree murder.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Brian C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez.
If found guilty, he could face life in prison or death. His public defender was appointed, and the judge issued a no-contact order for the victims' families. The judge also issued no bail, as Kohberger sits in the Latah County Jail.
I am going to leave the bail set of this case as no bail at this point in time until I have additional or further information at a later date and time.
19 pages, 1 redacted, of details in the case came out through a probable cause affidavit Thursday morning. The document shows law enforcement was watching Kohberger early on in the investigation, about 2 weeks after the murders. At the time, police publicly said they had no person of interest, and they kept information close to the vest, which frustrated many. The PCA says Xana and Ethan were found on the second floor of the King Street home. Maddie and Kaylee were found in a bed together on the third floor. In the bed next to Maddie, investigators say they noticed a tan leather knife sheath, which is a cover for the blade of a knife. They figured out it was a K-bar knife with Marine Corps insignia. The Idaho State Lab found a single source of male DNA on the sheath. They then compared it to trash they took from the Kohberger family home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania on December 27th. They say the DNA from the sheath was a nearly 100% match to that of the suspect's father. According to the affidavit, the two surviving roommates told police everyone was home by 2 a.m. and in their rooms by 4 a.m. One of the roommates says she was woken up around 4. She thought Kaylee was playing with her dog upstairs, which officers say they heard barking on a neighbor's security camera around the time of the murders. The affidavit says the roommate heard one of the victims say, "There's someone here," but she didn't see anything. She says she opened her door again after she heard crying from Xana's room and a man say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Then, when she opened her door a third time, she saw a person in black, wearing a mask covering the bottom of their face. She described him as tall, with an athletic build but not muscular, and with bushy eyebrows. He walked past her to the backsliding door, and she stood in a, quote, frozen shock phase. Investigators believe the murders happened between 4 and 4:25 a.m., November 13th. The 911 call wasn't made until around noon from one of the roommates' phones inside the home. On surveillance video they reviewed, investigators saw a Hyundai Elantra driving by the home multiple times around the time of the murders. Investigators learned Kohberger drove a Hyundai Elantra, and through cell phone records, investigators discovered he had been by the King Road home at least 12 times before the murders since the summer, mostly in the evenings and early morning. What the probable cause affidavit doesn't show is whether there are any connections between Kohberger and any of the people he killed. Outside the courthouse, after Thursday's hearing, the Gonsalves family gave a short statement to reporters through their attorney.
It's obviously an emotional time for the family, seeing the defendant for the first time. This is the beginning of the criminal justice system, and the family will be here for the long haul.
Brian Kohberger's next court hearing will be a status conference on January 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. In that status conference, they'll set his preliminary hearing, also referred to as a probable cause hearing. In that hearing, we hope to glean a little bit more information as to why investigators believe Kohberger is the one who committed these atrocious crimes. And again, we don't know if or what the connections between Kohberger and any of the victims in that off-campus house were. We also do not know whether police have recovered a murder weapon. They didn't say anything about that in the PCA that was released today as well. Brian?
I was going to ask you if we expect to hear more details other than what we heard today in the probable cause affidavit, but I guess we'll just wait to see what happens with that next hearing. Thank you very much, Morgan. So in that probable cause affidavit, investigators detail Kohberger's movements before and after the murders. News Channel 7's Abby Davis joins us now with a few more specifics as to how police tracked him.
Well, Brian, you just mentioned investigators were able to build a very detailed timeline of events, but let's start with the morning of the stabbings, November 13th. Kohberger's car was seen driving past the house on King Road, where the murders happened, several times. Something Moscow Police Department Corporal Brett Payne, who wrote the PCA, says isn't common in a neighborhood where traffic is usually very light early in the morning. According to the affidavit, a car matching Kohberger's, a white Hyundai Elantra, was seen on camera at 2:53 a.m. on November 13th, leaving Pullman, Washington, heading toward Moscow. That's about a 15-minute drive. That same Elantra was picked up again at 3:26 a.m. heading west on Indian Hills Drive. Then 2 minutes later, heading west on Steiner at Highway 95, which is less than a mile from the house on King Road where the murders happened. Starting at 3:29, the Elantra was seen passing the house 3 times. At 4:04, the Elantra turned around at a nearby apartment complex before going back and making a 3-point turn onto Queen Road. 16 minutes later, at 4:20, Kohberger's white Elantra is seen on camera speeding away from the area, heading south. About an hour later, at 5:25, several traffic cameras in Pullman and on the Washington State University campus captured the Elantra returning. Fast forward 12 days, on November 25th, the Moscow Police Department asked area law enforcement to look for a white Hyundai Elantra. Then, on November 29th, WSU police found a 2015 Hyundai Elantra registered to a student, 28-year-old Brian Kohberger, a graduate student studying criminology. His car was found about a half hour later at his WSU apartment complex in Pullman. His driver's license picture and information also matched the roommate's description of the man she saw in the house the morning of the murders. That pushed Moscow police to look into Kohberger's cell phone data, a number they got after pulling him over for a traffic violation back in August, before the murders. At 2:42 a.m. on November 13th, Kohberger's phone pinged at his apartment in Pullman. 5 minutes later, that phone left the apartment, traveling south through Pullman before it's turned off at 2:47. The phone doesn't ping again until 4:48 on Highway 95 south of Moscow, near Blaine. It then traveled south on 95 to Genesee, then west to Uniontown, and then north back to Pullman, where a white sedan was picked up on traffic cameras at 5:27, taking a roundabout way to his final destination. Again, cell phone records matched the movement of the Hyundai Elantra around the time of the murders. It didn't ping at the King Road house at the time of the murders, but investigators believe that's because he turned his phone off. And not only that, Brian, but Kohberger's phone pinged again hours after the murders happened at the King Road house.
Yeah, looks like he was back at about 9:15 in the morning,
yes,
and then made it back to his apartment in Pullman by 9:30. Possibly returning to the scene of the crime to see if anybody had noticed at that point if anything had happened. Interesting. Also interesting, the dozen times that he'd been in the area prior to November 13th.
Yes.
So hopefully some more details will be coming up to kind of explain that connection, how he picked this spot. We'll see how that plays out. Thank you very much, Abby. We know the suspect had firsthand knowledge of police data tracking and capabilities. Kohberger had been studying criminology for a decade in college, and as part of his studies, we've learned he often did research on how to commit a crime. Here's Whitney Ward from our sister station in Spokane.
Moscow police learned early on that suspect Brian Kohberger had an above-average understanding of police investigative tactics. According to court records, Kohberger's past education included undergraduate degrees in psychology and cloud-based forensics. We know he received an associate's degree in psychology at Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania in 2018. He then went on to DeSales University, also in Pennsylvania, for his bachelor's degree, then his master's degree in criminal justice. It was at DeSales we learned he studied under renowned criminal psychologist Katherine Ramsland, whose books included The Mind of a Murderer and How to Catch a Killer. In May, just before he graduated, authorities confirm he posted this Reddit survey asking participants to provide information to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. He asked questions like, how did you leave the scene? How did you accomplish your goal? And how did you approach the victim? Investigators also now know Kohberger applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. Documents state Kohberger wrote in his essay he had interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. During his time at Washington State University, Kohberger was listed as the teaching assistant for 3 undergrad classes in the Criminal Justice Department. He completed 1 semester in WSU's PhD program before he was arrested.
Still a lot of information to be known in this case, and of course we're going to continue to follow this story and keep you updated as we learn more. For the latest, you can follow us on our website, KTVB.com, social media, and of course on the KTVB app. Still to come here on the News at 10, the Idaho Supreme Court has upheld the state's restrictive abortion ban. We're going to break down the opinion and tell you why they made their decision.
This is the amount of rain that was received in your favorite spot today. We didn't get a lot of rain, but as you know, we did receive rain, and you know there's more to come. I'll have the details at 10:18.
The highest court in the state upheld 3 separate restrictive abortion laws today. The state Supreme Court released its opinion late this afternoon on Planned Parenthood versus the state of Idaho. Planned Parenthood and an Idaho doctor challenged Idaho's abortion laws. The laws ban all abortion except for the case of rape, incest, or to save the mother's life. They also allow family members of the woman who got an abortion to sue the doctor for performing that abortion for up to $20,000 each. News Channel 7's Andrew Bartline has read through the court's opinion and explains how they arrived at their 3-2 decision.
Justice Brody, Justice Bevin, and Justice Moeller all hold there is no fundamental right to abortion in the Idaho Constitution, whether that be explicit or implicit. The Inalienable Rights Clause, guaranteeing the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, was not ratified into the state constitution until 1889, At this point in history, the majority opinion says the right to abortion was not deeply rooted in the state history or traditions. Therefore, it is not clear to assume the framers had any intention to protect that right. The majority opinion adds, quote, "If the people of Idaho are dissatisfied with these new laws, they can elect new legislators." Both Justice Zahn and Justice Stegner dissented. Justice Zahn argues that women have the fundamental right to abortion, where both her and Justice Stegner agree these three laws are at odds with the Constitution. They argue, quote, "They are not narrowly tailored to achieve a compelling state interest."
Okay, so these three laws have already been in place because, well, the court removed the stays that were asked to be put on them while sorting through the legal process. With this decision, abortion remains illegal in the state of Idaho, with exceptions, as we mentioned, for rape, incest, or to save the mother's life. Planned Parenthood issued a response shortly after the announcement today. Planned Parenthood will never back down, it said. "We will keep fighting with everything we've got to restore Idahoans' right to control our bodies and our lives. No matter what happens, Planned Parenthood is here for you. Our doors are open in Idaho, and our teams are ready to help you get the care you need, even if that means traveling out of state." Governor Little is going to hold the annual State of the State address coming up on Monday. And we're going to have live coverage starting at noon right here on KTVB with the actual State of the State address starting at 1 o'clock. After the State of the State address, Idaho lawmakers, well, they're going to really get to work, or they're supposed to. Property taxes, infrastructure, personal liberties, sure to make the long list of topics they try to tackle this session. A lot of attention, though, is expected to be focused on education. We saw a lot of candidates campaigning on that in 2022. And there's already been a lot of social media chatter about school choice in Idaho. Several Republican lawmakers are repeating the mantra, fund students, not systems. Democrats, though, have concerns about that idea, saying public dollars should not be going to private institutions through programs like school vouchers. And that policy has the support of some GOP members. Others are open to exploring options.
I'm very concerned about all of this talk about school vouchers, which would siphon funds away from public schools to private schools where there's no accountability and no oversight, and we can't as taxpayers make sure that those children are getting what they need to succeed. And I'm even more concerned in this era where our public and charter schools we fund with public dollars aren't getting the funds they need.
I think what our focus on education is going to be is less on the facilities and current systems and more on workforce development. I think that's where we're finding a shortcoming, and we had done some town halls around the state earlier or at the end of last year to try to figure out what businesses needed for a workforce. And so I would look for some more targeted education investment when it comes to workforce development. I think that is going to be more of a focus this year.
Well, Democrats and Republicans say they are excited about the possibilities with so many new faces at the Capitol building.
From News Channel 7, time for 7 First Alert weather.
I know you noticed that the temperatures were quite a bit warmer today and the past couple of days, very mild for this time of year. Let me start off by showing you that the average temperature we would be normally at this time is 38 degrees for the high, and the normal low would be 25. So that's still pretty chilly because here we are just in the first part of January. But if you notice over here, we had a high today of 49 degrees. We just shattered that. And even the low this morning was down to a 36, so that shattered that low in the way of the average down to 25 degrees. This temperature of 49 is more typical, I see in 50s toward the end of February than what we'd see here in the month of January, especially this early in the month. So we've got that with some of those temperatures, and of course our temperature outlook going out here to the next 10 days, which gets us about the middle of the month, still shows us that those temperatures are going to be in the 40s. So they're going to stay that way for a little while. That means most of the moisture we see will be rain. I say there's still another chance of rain showers. We've got a breaking system, or just a little small surge that's breaking up as it moves toward the border. So out toward this area, Nissa, Ontario, Homedale could see a very light shower. Boise could have one overnight as well. We'll show you a little more in the Futurecast. Twin Falls, still some more rain showers through there, and California definitely will have some showers. Here's the next storm system, and you can see why we call it a trough. You can see that kind of U-shape or looking like a trough through here. We have lows that are embedded in this that's pushing toward California. They're going to get more rain, more heavy snow in the Sierras. We're going to get some snow in the mountains out of that, and even some rain showers as we move into the weekend. So as we look at this thing right now, in the way the snow-tail water equivalent, 129% of normal right now for Boise. Normal is 100%. So we're 29% above, 118% for Payette, Weiser 134%. And here's great news for the Big Wood area, because Sun Valley and some of those spots that's been so dry, 142% with that. So here's the chance of showers overnight, looking at actually very early for tomorrow morning. So your temperatures during the day tomorrow will be around 40 degrees for the Magic Valley. Most of your mountains, as you see, temperatures, highs will be into the 30s. Lows will be dropping off, not that much, but the upper 20s and lower 30s. Down through valley locations, you see temperatures into the mid 40s, 46 degrees for Boise, and the same thing for Meridian. The next 7 days, look for some showers off and on, and those mild temperatures, especially rain into the weekend. We're back with more in just a moment.
A Nampa couple is $1 million richer today. Well, close to $1 million. They still got to pay taxes on that. But they did this after winning the Idaho Lottery $1 million raffle. Kim Mitchell says she was watching the announcement last night and then realized they had the winning ticket. She says she called her husband, Steve, right there with that photo, to tell him the news. Steve says he didn't believe her at first, and why would he? The couple says they plan to set aside their winnings for retirement. In case you're wondering, the ticket was sold at the Maverick on Karcher and Franklin in Nampa. Congratulations. And big news, volleyball fans. Beach volleyball is coming to Caldwell. The College of Idaho announced today the addition of beach volleyball as an intercollegiate program. College says their program is one of 2 here in the state of Idaho. The first official beach volleyball match will happen sometime in the spring of 2024. So a lot of time to gear up for that. All right, one key contributor on the Boise State basketball team is playing through pain. Sports Director Jay Tuss is going to fill us in on what that means as the Broncos prepare for a big showdown with Utah State. That's next.
He was doing a lot of good things for us.
Broncos run it quickly into the other end of the floor. Rice hits the 3 in transition. Rice with 7, Shaver with an assist.
He spaces the floor so well and moves the ball so well and makes others better. He scored when we really needed some hoops there and kind of got us some gaps and hit a big 3 that got us up to 10 or 11. That was huge.
Rice getting into the paint. Rice with 4, turns and shoots. Rice hits some of the more unorthodox shots.
Yeah, I thought he did some great stuff, no doubt about it. And Max had 14 3 assists, only 1 turnover, and he's +7 in his minutes, and so it was huge.
In his first full season as a starter, Boise State senior guard Max Rice has thrived in his new role. Oftentimes, he leads the team in plus-minus, meaning that when Max is on the floor, the Broncos are usually at their best. Through 15 games, he's finished in double figures 11 times. Coming into this season, he had just 12 such performances in his entire career combined. Not bad for a guy that's gutting through a pretty significant injury at the moment.
I guess I can say it. It's not going to change the way teams try to go at him anyways. He's playing with a herniated disc.
Yeah, I thought we were keeping that one top secret, but I guess it's out there now. I herniated one of my lower discs in my back. Nothing that meds can't help me with, so I'll obviously play through it.
I mean, it's a living truth. He's playing, and he's out there, and he's fighting through it, and, some days it's better than others. Travel sometimes affects things, but I know 2 programs where there's other kids that have the same thing he has. They're not even playing, and it shows you how tough he is.
I think I've created a good system of how many pills I need to take, and I kind of got it down to a science almost. And I have a good threshold of pain that I can play through. So I think I need to play just to help the team. Obviously, I'll be good to go the rest of the season, and then try to figure out what I'll do.
I tell you, Max gets his toughness from his mom, without a doubt. Hey, over to the gridiron, one of the best kickers in college football is planning to return to Boise State next season. Senior-to-be Jonah Dalmas announced on Twitter today that he's going to suit up again for the Broncos this year. Dalmas was successful on 23 of 27 field goal attempts and racked up 117 points this past season. Dalmas has 54 career field goals to his name. That is only 13 shy of the program record. Hey, before we get you to bed, how about some high school basketball highlights? An epic battle going on over at Mountain View. The Mavs hosting Hawaii. Hawaii, one of the best teams in the country, but Mountain View giving them everything they could handle and more tonight. How about Camden Hyde stealing that one, giving it up to Owen McBride. He lays it in. Liam Campbell, one of the best recruits in all of high school basketball, not just in Idaho, but in the country. He had a great game. But guess what? Hawaii comes up short. Mountain View scores a massive upset. They win tonight 66-65 the final. We're back right after this.
Well, today, equine and bovine mixed with people on the streets of downtown Denver for the first time since 2020. The Western Stock Show kicking off this morning. It's a 117-year-old tradition that brings together thousands of farmers, ranchers, and people from all over. It continues in the Denver area through the 22nd. We'll see you tomorrow.